Ethan moved carefully through the smoking field. His boots crunched over broken metal and cracked glass. He wasn't a soldier or a hero. He was just a salvage worker looking for parts he could sell. But this crash site didn't feel normal. It was too quiet, too fresh, too strange. Smoke curled from twisted alien panels. Glowing with faint blue energy, the ship had come down fast, maybe even shot down. He checked his scanner, picked up weak life signs, faint, but still there. Ethan paused, heart pounding. He looked at the wreckage and whispered, "Anyone alive in there?" A soft cry came from inside. It wasn't human. It was light, high-pitched, almost musical. He pulled out his emergency mask and flashlight. Then crawled into the broken hull. Inside, the air smelled of burnt wires and blood. He followed the weak sound until he saw them. Two figures curled up against the wall, small, feminine, with smooth lavender skin and long silver hair. Alien girls. Both young, maybe late teens in human years. One had a deep gash on her leg. The other had a swollen bruise on her head. They stared at him with wide, glowing eyes. One flinched and held up a small blade. Ethan slowly raised his hands. "Easy. I'm not here to hurt you." They didn't understand the words, but they understood his tone. The one with the knife dropped it. Trembling, the other girl tried to stand, but her knees gave out. Ethan rushed forward and caught her. Her skin was cold. "Come on, I got you," he said gently. He wrapped his arms around both of them. They were light, too light, probably starving. Without thinking, Ethan lifted them both and carried them out of the wreck. He placed them near his transport vehicle and gave them water. They sipped carefully, staring at him like he was some kind of ghost. He found a medical kit and began cleaning their wounds. The girls didn't fight him, just watched him with wide eyes. When he placed a blanket over them, one of them whispered something in her alien tongue. He didn't understand, but her voice was soft, thankful. Maybe hours passed, and the sky darkened. Ethan started a fire and cooked a small meal from his rations. He offered them the warm food, and they hesitated. Then they ate, slowly, like they hadn't eaten in days. The shy one leery, he later learned about her head low after eating. The other Vexa stared at him boldly, then said something sharp in her own language. Ethan raised a brow. "Yeah, I don't know what that means." She just smirked and leaned back against the blanket. He couldn't shake the feeling they were studying him, watching every move he made. Later that night, Ethan checked their crashed pod again. There was nothing left, no distress beacon. No weapons. It was clear now they were survivors of something bad. And they had no one else. When he returned to the fire, both girls were curled up close together. They looked small, fragile, but peaceful under the blanket. He smiled and sat down near them, poking the fire with a stick. "I'll take you to my farm tomorrow," he said softly. "It's quiet there. You'll be safe." As he spoke, Vexa opened one eye. She looked at Leary and whispered something. Leary nodded, her cheeks slightly pink. Then they both whispered, in sync, soft but certain, "Chosen." Ethan didn't hear it, but in their culture, that word meant everything. To them, a man who carried you, fed you, healed you, and watched over you was not just a helper. He was something far more. Ethan's farm sat on the edge of a quiet human colony. Far from the city, it was surrounded by trees, rocky hills, and open sky. A perfect place to stay hidden, especially for two alien girls with no place to go. He helped Leary and Vexa out of the transport. They still looked weak, but stronger than the day before. Leary held onto his arm gently, while Vexa walked ahead, head high, scanning the surroundings. Ethan led them into his small farmhouse. "I know it's not fancy," he said, "but it's safe." The girls looked around in silence. Everything was strange to them: wooden floors, human furniture, pictures on the wall. Ethan guided them to the guest room. To clean beds, fresh clothes, warm towels, he pointed to everything, speaking slowly. "Bed, food, wash, They watched him closely, nodding like students after settling them in. Ethan went to the kitchen and started cooking. He made soup with vegetables and bread. He wasn't a great cook, but it was warm. When he brought the food to the table, Leary's eyes lit up. Vexa sniffed it suspiciously, then nodded with approval. They ate slowly, quietly, but with clear hunger, halfway through the meal. Leary bowed her head and whispered, "Thank you, husband." Ethan blinked. "Wait, what did you say?" She looked up, confused, then repeated, "Husband." Vexa smirked. "Whose band?" she said proudly, patting his arm. Ethan nearly dropped his spoon. No, wait. What?" He laughed nervously. "I think your translator is broken." But the girls weren't joking. To them, he was already theirs. That night, Ethan sat outside on his porch, staring at the stars. He couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would they call me husband? I didn't marry anyone. The wind blew softly, and he rubbed his face. Maybe it was a cultural misunderstanding. The next morning, things got weirder. Leary made the bed neatly and brought him a cup of tea. She bowed deeply and said, "For you, my mate." Vexa helped him fix a broken fence, standing close and smiling every time he looked her way. Every word they spoke now included the word mate. Bonded, or ours. Ethan couldn't ignore it anymore. He walked to the edge of the colony and visited the old alien library. Inside, dusty books sat untouched for years. He searched until he found one titled Customs of the Outer Clans. He sat down and read. The more he read, the colder he felt. In many alien cultures, feeding someone, sheltering them, and healing their wounds were considered sacred bonding rituals, especially if done by a male to unmarried females. There were rules, steps, and even signals, and Ethan had done all of them without even knowing it. He shut the book and whispered, "Oh no." When he returned home, both girls were waiting at the door. They had flowers in their hands, woven into a crown shape. "Ethan," Leary said softly, "this is for you." Vexa placed hers on his head proudly. "Now everyone will know." "Know what?" Ethan asked weakly. "That we are your wives," she replied, smiling like it was the best thing in the galaxy. Before Ethan could protest, his neighbor arrived. It's an older alien male with gray skin and wise eyes. He looked at Ethan's head, then at the girls. "Congratulations." The neighbor said, "You chose well. I didn't choose anything." Ethan said, panicked. The neighbor chuckled. "You fed them, healed them, sheltered them, and accepted their gifts. That is choosing." Ethan stood there, stunned. As the neighbor walked away, back inside, he tried to talk to the girls. He spoke slowly. "I was just helping, that's all." Leary tilted her head, confused. "Helping is love," she said, placing her hand on his chest. Vexa nodded. Only a bonded male protects so fiercely. He didn't know how to respond. They weren't angry. They weren't demanding anything. They were just sure that he belonged to them now. Later that evening, as they sat around the fireplace, Ethan watched them. Leary quietly hummed a tune, folding clothes. Vexa was sharpening a tool she had made from scrap metal. They acted like they had always been here, like they had always lived with him, and maybe a part of him didn't mind, but he couldn't ignore the weight of it either. What had he gotten himself into? As the fire crackled and the night grew darker, Leary leaned against his shoulder and whispered, "Tomorrow, we'll begin the joining dance." Ethan coughed. "The what?" Vexa only grinned. "Sleep well, husband," she said, eyes shining with mischief, and Ethan knew. Tomorrow was going to be even stranger. Ethan woke up early, his mind full of questions. The night had been quiet. Too quiet, he barely slept, replaying every moment since the crash. Leary and Vexa now acted like they were his wives. And worse, everyone else seemed to agree. How did this even happen? He was just trying to help, not start an alien marriage. The sun peeked through the window as he walked toward the kitchen. Leary was already there, stirring a pot of tea. She smiled when she saw him. "Morning, husband." He winced. "Please stop calling me that." Vexa walked in behind him. Wrapped in one of his old shirts, she smirked. "But you are," he sighed. "I need answers." After a quick breakfast, he grabbed his coat and walked back to the colony. This time, he didn't stop until he reached the cultural center near the alien quarter. The old librariana, three-eyed woman with long gray tendrils, recognized him. "You look troubled, human. I need to learn about bonding traditions," Ethan said urgently. She led him to a dusty corner and pulled out a thick blue book, Love, Mating, and Marriage in the Outer Races. Ethan sat down and flipped through the pages. The words were old, but the rules were clear. Page after page described actions that meant love or marriage in alien culture. Feeding someone. That was a life offering, healing them. A soul vow, giving shelter. Home binding and accepting a gift, especially flowers, was a public confirmation. Ethan froze. He had done all of that. He slammed the book shut and muttered, "I accidentally married to aliens." The librarian chuckled. "Many have done worse." "Worse?" "I didn't even mean to." "Intent doesn't matter in their culture," she said. "Only action." Ethan stood up fast. "I have to fix this." Back at the farmhouse, the girls were outside tending to his garden. Leary was humming, planting vegetables. Vexa was fixing the broken fence post. It was like they were already living here, already home. Ethan walked up and said firmly, "We need to talk." They followed him inside and sat on the couch. He held up the book. "This says what I did means marriage." Leary smiled softly. "Yes," Vexa nodded. "You completed all 4 steps." Ethan rubbed his head. "But I didn't know." "Was doing that." Leary tilted her head. "Then why do it?" "'Cause I was trying to be decent," he replied. "Helping someone doesn't mean you want to marry them." Vexa leaned forward. "Serious now. In our culture, a male who gives so much without asking proves he is worthy." "You gave without taking," Leary whispered. "That is sacred." "I gave because you needed help," he said. "Not because I wanted wives." Silence filled the room. Then Leary looked down, her eyes a little sad. "Do you wish we leave?" Ethan's heart stung for a second. "No, no jest." "I'm confused." He sat down beside them. "I didn't mean to trick anyone. And I'm not ready to be someone's husband." Vexa looked at Leary, then back at him. "Then we wait," she said, surprising him. "We won't leave, and we won't force." Leary nodded. "We just stay and show our hearts." That night, something changed. Ethan found himself watching them more closely. The way Leary sang softly while brushing her hair. The way Vexa smiled when she finished fixing something broken. They were kind, strong, and beautiful in their own strange ways. He couldn't lie, he liked having them here. But still, he needed time. The next morning, things got even more complicated. A loud knock shook the front door. Ethan opened it to find a tall, alien male, armored and angry. His voice was deep and rough. "I challenge you, human." Ethan blinked. "What? Challenge me for what?" "For the right to bond with Vexa," the alien growled. "She is mine by blood, and you have no rank." Ethan turned to Vexa, who stood proudly beside him. "I choose the human," she said, without hesitation. The warrior snarled. Then, "He must face the Protector's test." "What's that?" Ethan asked nervously. "A trial," Vexa said calmly, "to prove your heart and strength." Leary walked over and placed a hand on Ethan's chest. "You don't have to fight if you don't want to," she whispered. "But if you do, you fight for both of us." Ethan took a deep breath. He had no idea how to fight alien warriors or pass their tests, but he also knew one thing. He didn't want to lose them. Not now. He looked at the warrior and said, "Fine, I accept. The alien smirked. You'll regret that. And with that, the challenge was set. Ethan had just agreed to fight for the hearts of two alien girls he never meant to marry. And somehow, he didn't feel like running away anymore. The news spread fast through the nearby alien colony. A human male had accepted the protector test. Some laughed, thinking it was a joke. Others were curious, whispering stories of the strange human who had bonded with two alien females. But for Ethan, it was no joke. He was in trouble, and he knew it at dawn. Vexa handed him a piece of armor made from her people's metal. It was light but strong. You must wear this during the test, she said. It shows who you fight for. Leary handed him a small symbol carved from stone. It was shaped like two crescent moons joined together. This is our clan's heart symbol, she whispered. Carry it, and we will stand with you. Even in spirit, Ethan held the token in his hand. I'm not sure I can do this, he admitted. Vexa stepped closer, her voice calm but firm. This is not about winning, Ethan, she said. It is about showing your heart. Leary nodded. Even if you fall, standing for us means more than victory. Still, Ethan was nervous. He had never been in a fight like this. Sure, he could fix engines and survive storms. But this was a different kind of battle. Not just strength, but honor, courage, and heart. The test arena was set outside the colony, a circle made from stone and banners. Aliens from many races gathered. Forming a silent crowd, in the center stood the challenger Korak, a powerful alien from Vex's homeworld. He was over 7 feet tall, with tusks, glowing red eyes, and muscles like tree trunks. Ethan stepped forward, wearing simple gear, holding no weapon. The crowd murmured, surprised. By his choice, you come unarmed. Korak shouted, I came to protect, not destroy, Ethan replied. Leary gasped quietly, and even Vex's fierce expression softened. The test began with the circle walk. Each man had to walk around the ring 3 times, eyes never leaving the other. Ethan did his best, but Korak moved like a trained warrior. Then came the second stage trial of resolve. Korak rushed forward, swinging a heavy practice blade. Ethan dodged, barely avoiding the hit. He rolled, scrambled, and used the arena's rocks to block strikes. The crowd grew louder. Many surprised the human lasted even a minute. Ethan didn't hit back, but he never gave up ground. He ducked, slipped, and climbed a boulder to stay moving. His body ached, but he kept going. Korak roared, Fight me, coward! I'm not your enemy, Ethan shouted. I'm their protector. Then he did something no one expected. He threw down the token from Leary. Not in anger, but with care. He placed it between himself and Korak. If you want to hurt them, he said, you'll have to step over that. The crowd fell silent. Korak hesitated. Looking down at the symbol, Leary and Vexa stepped forward from the crowd, eyes shining with emotion. Korak turned and faced the elders. I yield, he said. Gasps spread across the arena. I came to prove I was worthy, he continued, but he already did. The crowd burst into loud cheers. Ethan stood frozen, heart racing. Confused but relieved, Leary ran to him first, wrapping her arms around him. You passed, she whispered. Not by strength, but by soul. Vexa stood beside him, arms crossed, trying to look calm. Her eyes were soft. You fool, she said. You could have died. He looked at her, tired but smiling. Yeah, but it would have been for the right reasons. Back at the farmhouse, the mood was lighter. Ethan sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot tea. Leary rested her head on his shoulder, while Vexa sharpened a new blade nearby. Still don't believe you're our husband? Vexa asked with a raised brow. Ethan sighed. I don't know what I am. You're someone who risked everything for us, Leary said softly. Vexa nodded. And in our world, that's more than enough. Ethan looked out at the night sky. He hadn't planned any of this, but somehow, these two alien girls had entered his quiet life like a storm, and maybe he didn't want them to leave anymore. He smiled faintly and whispered, "Well, if I'm going to be your husband, you better teach me how to dance like your people." Vexa laughed for the first time without teasing. Leary took his hand. In hers, warm and steady, tomorrow would bring more questions. But tonight, he had passed the test, not just of the body, but of the heart. 2 days passed since the protector test. Ethan thought the worst was behind him. He had survived, earned the respect of the alien crowd, and even begun to accept the strange idea that Leary and Vexa saw him as their chosen one. The farm was peaceful again, and the girls seemed happier. Leary hummed soft tunes while planting herbs. Vexa was training with wooden weapons behind the barn, teaching Ethan how to block, dodge, and when needed strike. But the peace didn't last long. Late one night, a strange sound echoed through the trees. Ethan stepped outside. A flashlight in one hand, he found Vexa already alert. Crouched near the fence, Leary was behind her, eyes wide with fear. "What is it?" Ethan asked. Vexa sniffed the air. "They found us," she said sharply. "Hunters, hunters." Ethan repeated. "Royal bounty seekers," Leary whispered, "from our homeworld." "We weren't just travelers," Vexa admitted. "We were running." Ethan stared at them. "From who?" "From the royal clans," Vexa said, standing tall now. "We were born into them, but we refused our roles." Leary nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "We escaped before they forced us into arranged bonds." "And now," Vexa continued, "they want to drag us back." Ethan looked between them, heart racing. "So they're here to take you by force?" "Yes," Vexa said, voice cold and angry, "and they won't care who stands in their way." Just then, a flash lit the sky. A small shuttle landed not far from the farmhouse. Armored figures stepped out, silent, professional, dangerous. Leary trembled, clutching Ethan's arm. "We can run," she whispered. "Please." Ethan looked at his tool shed. His home, the girls beside him. Then he made a choice. "No," he said. "We fight inside the house." He grabbed an old hunting rifle and his tool bag. Vexa strapped on her armor, pulling Ethan's symbol to her chest. Leary held the crescent, moonstone, and whispered a prayer to the stars. The hunters moved in fast, surrounding the house. One of them stepped forward, helmet glowing. "Turn over the royal runaways." "And no one gets hurt?" the voice said. Ethan walked to the porch, rifle at his side. "They live here now," he said, "and no one's taking them." The hunter tilted his head. "You are human. This is not your matter." "It became my matter," Ethan replied. "When I carried them from wreckage, when I gave them food, and when they chose me." A pause, then the hunter raised his hand signal to attack. Vexa was faster. She charged. With a fierce yell, blade in hand, Leary stayed behind, helping Ethan set traps, explosive charges hidden in the grass. The first wave of hunters stumbled into the traps. Shocked by the explosions and smoke, Ethan used a homemade flash device. Too blind, two more. He wasn't a soldier, but he was smart. He used wires, nails, and even farming drones to confuse the enemy. Vexa moved like a shadow, striking, dodging, and protecting Leary. But they were outnumbered. One hunter reached the porch, pushing Leary down. Ethan tackled him, struggling on the wooden steps. The hunter pulled a blade. Ethan kicked it away and smashed him with a wrench. Blood on his hand, he stood, panting. He had never fought like this before, but he wasn't giving up. Another hunter raised a weapon at Leary. Vexa leaped in front. Taking the hit to her side, she groaned but stayed standing. Ethan grabbed the hunter's arm and twisted it, forcing the alien down. Leary screamed Ethan's name as more shadows closed in. Then sirens, the colony guards arrived. Drawn by the battle and the smoke, the hunters backed off, disappearing. Into the trees, the guards took Ethan, Leary, and Vexa back to safety in the medical tent. Vexa sat beside Ethan, bruised and bloody. "I told you they wouldn't stop," she said quietly. "I didn't either," he replied, trying to smile. Leary placed a hand on his chest, her eyes full of tears. "You could have died," she whispered. "But I didn't," he said. "Because we fought together, an elder from the colony entered the tent. We reviewed the attack," he said. "You had every right to defend them." He turned to Ethan. "You didn't have to fight for them." "I know," Ethan replied. "But I wanted to." The elder nodded slowly. "Then you have chosen more than just love," he said. "You've chosen war against a royal decree." Outside, the stars still glowed. Vexa leaned her head on Ethan's shoulder. "You keep saying you were just helping," she said softly. "But you've become more than that now." Ethan said nothing, because deep down, he knew it was true. And for the first time, he didn't want to run from it anymore. The next morning, smoke still floated over the fields. The fire had been put out, the traps had cooled, and the wounded were healing. But Ethan's home was no longer safe. The hunters would return, and next time, they'd bring more. Leary and Vexa sat in silence. By the window, watching the tree line, Ethan stood at the edge of the room, staring at the broken door. He had protected them, bled for them, but now, he had to make a choice run, or risk everything again. Ethan, Leary said gently, "We should leave." Her voice was soft, but there was pain in it. "We don't want to bring more danger to your life." Vexa nodded, arms crossed, trying to hide the sadness in her eyes. "We were free for a moment," she said. "That's more than most ever get." Ethan turned to them, his voice quiet but firm. "You're not leaving." Leary blinked. "But no," he repeated, walking over. "This is your home now." He knelt in front of them. "You think this place matters more than you?" He asked, "You think a few walls mean more than your lives?" Leary's eyes filled with tears. Vexa looked away, jaw tight, "But they'll come again." Vexa said, "And they won't stop." Ethan nodded. "Then we'll be ready." He opened a drawer and pulled out a small device, a colony distress beacon. "I was saving this for emergencies," he said. "This is one." Leary touched his arm. "If you send that signal," she warned, "the royal clans will know where we are." "They already do," Ethan replied. "But now, others will know, too." He pressed the button, a red light blinked, and the signal went out across the stars. 2 allies, 2 enemies. To anyone listening, that night, they camped in the forest behind the farm. The house was too damaged to sleep in. Ethan made a fire and passed out warm food. Leary curled beside him, her head resting on his shoulder. Vexa sat across from him, sharpening her blade as usual, but tonight her hands trembled slightly. "You still don't get it," she said quietly. Ethan looked up. "What don't I get?" "You chose us," Vexa said. "Even now, after all this, you keep choosing us." He looked into her, glowing eyes. "I didn't plan any of this," he said honestly, "but I don't want to lose you." Leary whispered, "Even if it means your life." He nodded. "Yes." Vexa stood and walked over to him, her face close. "Then stop pretending this isn't real," she said. "We're not just guests, not just aliens. You rescued We're your mates." Ethan swallowed hard. She knelt beside him and gently pressed her forehead to his. In her culture, it meant something sacred. Leary placed her hand on top of both of theirs. A soft glow surrounded them, warm and golden. Ethan gasped slightly. What is that?" Leary smiled. "The bond," she said. "It's not just a word. It's real." The next morning, the beacon answered, but not with warships. A trader ship landed quietly, piloted by an old alien smuggler named Barrick. He had gray horns, a crooked smile, and a ship full of secrets. I heard a human bonded with two royal bloods, he said, stepping out, and I thought, either he's the craziest fool in the galaxy or the bravest. Ethan chuckled. Probably both. Beric offered them a deal. I can take you somewhere safe, he said. Off the grid, hidden from scanners, Ethan looked at the girls. What do you think? Leary nodded. A place to be free. Together. Vexa smirked. Sounds like paradise. Ethan walked to the edge of the field and looked back at the farmhouse. Broken windows, scorched walls, crushed fence posts, but the memory of kindness still lingered there. This place had brought them together, but now they had to move on. He turned back. Let's go. They boarded the smuggler's ship, holding hands as the engines hummed. Leary leaned against Ethan, her eyes half closed. Vexa stood tall beside them, alert but calm. For the first time in days, they felt safe as the ship lifted off. Beric glanced back and grinned. You know, he said, you're basically married. Now Ethan laughed. I know, he replied, and somehow, I'm okay with that. They didn't know what waited ahead, but they had each other now, and sometimes, that's all you need to keep going. The stars stretched out before them, like a road, and for the first time, Ethan wasn't walking it alone. The smuggler's ship flew quietly through deep space. Ethan stood at the observation window, watching stars slide past like silver rain behind him. Leary and Vexa rested on a shared seat, heads close together, sleeping peacefully, for once. There was no danger outside, no shouting, no hunters. Only the hum of the engine and the warm glow of safety. Beric, the old alien pilot, sipped thick coffee and grinned. You're a strange one, human, he said without looking up. Ethan turned. Raising a brow? How so? Most humans avoid royal drama, not dive into it with both feet. Ethan chuckled. Yeah. I didn't plan for any of this. Beric looked over his shoulder, voice lowering. They're not just royal runaways, you know? Ethan frowned. What do you mean? Beric leaned back. They're daughters of the first matron of Viari Prime. That makes them direct heirs. Ethan blinked, stunned. I thought they were just nobility. Beric shook his head. They're more than that. They're the heart of an entire world. Ethan turned back toward the girls. Leary's fingers twitched gently in her sleep. Vexa murmured something and shifted closer to her. He felt a strange weight in his chest, pride, fear, and something else, something deeper. When they landed on a quiet moon 2 systems away, Beric guided them to a hidden settlement. Okay, old stone buildings, warm lights, friendly faces, no royal guards, no scanners, no threats. Here, no one knew their names. They were given a small house near a lake. Ethan carried their bags, smiling as Leary gasped at the glowing water. Vexa dipped her foot in and declared it acceptable. The house had a fire pit, soft beds, and a wide porch. It wasn't home yet, but it could be. Days passed slowly. They built a new routine. Leary spent time planting alien herbs in the soil. Vexa helped train the locals in basic defense and sparred with Ethan every morning. Ethan worked with his hands. Fixing broken systems around the village, they cooked together, laughed often, and slept side by side each night. But something still lingered in the air. Ethan could feel it, like a question no one was asking. One night, as they sat near the lake, Leary finally spoke. Will you say it? Ethan blinked. Say what? That we're your wives, she said softly, not just by custom, but by heart. Vexa stood, arms folded, staring at the sky. I know humans don't bond like we do. She said, but we've done everything. Except speak the words. Ethan looked at them both, his voice gentle. I didn't understand what I was walking into, but I understand now. You gave me love without asking for anything back. Leary stepped closer. So will you. Speak it. He took her hand, then reached for Vex's too. He stood between them, holding both hands tight. Yes, he said. Yes, I will. I choose you, Leary. I choose you, Vexa. Not because of accident or custom, but because I want. This life with you. Vexa blinked fast, then looked away like she was hiding a tear. Leary smiled so brightly it made the stars seem dim. Then both girls leaned forward and pressed their foreheads to Ethan's. The glow returned, the golden warmth, like before, only stronger now. In that moment, a connection locked between them. Oh, not just emotional, but something deeper, older. Sacred, the bond of mates, fully accepted, fully real. The next day, the village prepared a small celebration. Nothing grand, just food, music, and glowing lights around the lake. The locals smiled and danced, tossing flowers at the couple as they walked hand in hand. Leary wore a dress made of soft green silk, her silver hair tied with tiny gems. Vexa wore a battle sash over her shoulder. Sharp-eyed but happy, Ethan stood between them. Wearing simple clothes, but his eyes said everything. He didn't need a crown or a title. He had what mattered most. As the music played and the stars sparkled above, a local elder raised a glass. To the human, she said, who came as a helper but stayed as a husband. Everyone laughed and clapped. Ethan smiled, turning to his mates. You know, he whispered, I thought I was just helping. Vexa leaned close, grinning. You were, she said. And you helped yourself into 2 wives. Leary giggled and wrapped her arm around his, and we're never letting go. The wind blew softly across the water. The lake shimmered, the stars reflected in every ripple, and there, under a quiet alien sky, the unexpected husband stood with his chosen hearts, not as a rescuer or a stranger, but as the man who finally knew where he belonged.